Your call is very important. Please
It's your Call That Radio TV. We are live, and we've got a special episode tonight. It's the Q&A for Darren McGarvey ahead of his new book, The Social Distance Between Us, which you can see behind me there. How Remote Politics Wrecked Britain. And I think we go live to Darren just now. How you doing, mate?
Hello, how are you, Mark? Good to see you.
It's good to see you too, mate. It's been a while. It has been a while. I've got a new book out. Mate, I'm absolutely buzzing that this book has came to the end. There was obviously moments where I think you were struggling a bit with it, or you seemed like you were doubtful. But every so often I see you having a eureka moment, and it was like, yes, come on, you could do this. Yeah. And there's a few questions about that as well. We've got, basically, what we've done tonight is, I think last week you invited the people of Twitter to ask you questions about your new book. So that's kind of going to be the rough. What we're going to do is dip into those Twitter questions. But if anyone is tuned in tonight as well, if you've got a question, I'll do my best to get through them all as well. But congratulations on the new book. First of all, what's it about for people that don't know?
Nice one, thanks, Mark. Well, I mean, it's about the sort of stuff that I usually cover for people that are familiar with what I'm doing. It's looking at social inequality, but I think the main thesis of the book is that because the class divides are so stark in Britain, then we essentially grow up on opposite sides of a kind of ravine, you know what I mean, with different cultures, different economic interests, different ways of speaking, and that when you take all of that into account, it becomes very difficult for people in power to do right by working class people, even if they want to, because they become so removed from other people's reality that it's just, you know, if they've got no first-hand experience, then how would they know how to create a welfare state that doesn't kill people? How would they know to set up an education system that doesn't over-penalise working class kids with behavioural problems and all of these things? So it's a kind of my attempt at a comprehensive look at education, the labour market, the criminal justice system, housing, property, as well as cultural stuff like how we speak and what impact that has on our opportunities. And then other things like the concept of meritocracy or the myth of meritocracy. And then the second part of the book takes that theme of distance and applies it to like political ideologies. Do you know what I mean? So what is it Tories get wrong and why? Why does working class people not connect with the radical left? What is populism all about? What is all that anger about? And then looking at kind of Blairism and this idea of centrists, you know what I mean, who always style themselves as the grown-ups. But actually, if you really examine their legacy, you could say that a lot of where we are now begins with that kind of Blair velvet glove on the iron Tory fist, you know what I mean? So it's out on June the 16th, and I'm looking forward to seeing what everybody thinks.
Well, I'm going to just put a wee link in the comments for anyone to pre-order it. It's going to be in May. What date does it drop again?
It's June now. It's been moved to June, so it's going to be June the 16th. But people can get along to any of these launch events. We've got the Glasgow launch on the 13th of June. Or on the 16th of June in London as well. So there's two launch events, and I think people will be able to purchase a book at these, even if it is before publication date, I think.
Well, I've got the conversation with Frankie Boyle, which is amazing, man. Frankie Boyle at Oran Moore, and that's got to be a dream come true as well. And we've obviously, you've worked with Frankie before, like you were on his... was it Class Wars, or was it his show?
I was on
your show. You were on his show.
Aye, and we talked a wee bit about language, and he came to see me. That was a buzz that time. He came to see my show at the Stand. Do you know what I mean? So, like, that was just and it was a sellout show as well. I mean, I think that was one of the shows where it just felt like everybody came out for it. So, it was quite a buzz. And then we just, like, had wee bits of correspondence here and there, or he would send me things to read articles or something like that he was reading. And Aye, and then really the publisher Penguin was kind of just trying to think, getting the right people to kind of, chair these in conversation events. And obviously for Glasgow, Frankie just seemed like an obvious fit, you know what I mean? Because as much as obviously he's known for his comedy and all of that, there is another side to him, where he's quite robust in a discussion about politics and things like that, you know what I mean? And he turns the comedy down a wee bit and dials it in, and just thought that it would also create a kind of a big event, you know what I mean, for my first real thing after the pandemic, to just sort of say, right, we're getting the show on the road, you know what I mean? So we were dead happy that he agreed to do it, and really looking forward to hopefully a lot of people coming out for it.
So it's June the 13th. I put a link in the comments. Tickets went on sale today. Oh, they go on sale Friday.
Friday, aye.
They go on sale on Friday, so get a ticket along with that. Monday the 13th of June. And yeah, man, let's go to the Twitter sphere. And I mean, is Twitter where you live mostly online these days?
Mostly, just because I just feel the algorithm's a bit more generous. Do you know what I mean? When you're trying to get the word out, and also I like Facebook more for talking. When I'm writing stuff on Facebook, I'm thinking of like a couple of handfuls of people. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking about like you reading it, or my mate Gasp reading it, or I don't really think about the fact that there is actually a lot of people still following me on there as well. So I don't know. I have a bit more a laugh on Facebook. Do you know what I mean? I always just feel like I'm talking to the scene when I'm on Facebook. And it's quite a good wee outlet that way. You know what I mean? Just to be a wee bit more informal with it. So Twitter's where I do most of my stuff, man, like professional wise.
Let's see what the Twitter sphere had to say. I think the first question comes from Stuart Schiller, who said, are your most productive periods of writing down to luck, in brackets, the kids are healthier and in a good mood, or design, like you found a way of making the most of your time? If it's option 2, can you talk about how you make the time?
Okay, good question. I mean, obviously, yeah, luck is part of it, in terms of, are you going to be feeling inspired on any particular day? But the thing about committing to a big project like a book is that you've still got to work even when you don't feel inspired, and even when you don't have time and energy. But within that madness, I try to kind of, in lockdown, I would try to get up early before the kids woke up. So obviously you're talking 3:30, 4 in the morning. And then what I found was, if I got a couple of hours of solid writing done, then I would be a lot calmer during the day, however the day went, because I knew I had made contact with the work, done a bit of the work, done my best. And then, if I got a spare hour at any point during the day, I would do it a wee bit in the evening when the kids go down to bed. But obviously in a lockdown scenario, you can't really blame anything, because it's just a mad circumstance that you've been put in. Obviously, like when our routines turned back to normal and the nurseries and schools and all that opened, then that became a wee bit less stressful, because you can bank on having that free time, or being able to catch up on sleep if you've had to work through the night and all that. So it's a combination of luck, and then also being able to see where the bullets are coming from and try to plan ahead. I'm kind of big on routine and structure, just because in order to be spontaneous, in order to diverge from the plan, I need to have the security of that structure to deviate from. I'm not one of these people that can just be kind of, flying by the seat of my pants all the time. My wife is a bit like that. She's a bit more like you, Mark, in terms of, she's just like, fucking right, we can do it. Do you know what I mean? And we'll just deal with it all as it comes. But I just begin to kind of disintegrate under those circumstances. Do you know what I mean? Like, I need to know my exit plan for every situation. So it's a combination, I think, of luck, and also just fucking try to have a plan and stick to it.
And a book as well. There's obviously, as someone who's never written a book, but I mean, I can fly by the seat of my pants for, like, I don't know, making a song, organising a gig, or even doing a podcast or whatever. But with a book, I can only imagine the kind of concentration that would take. And And also, the book, before I forget as well, we've also got because I don't think you've been on this show for ages, man. If anyone's not tuned into Call It Radio before, we've had Darren on a couple of times. And I think it was right in the middle of heavy lockdown. And since then, I think you've had Class Wars has been on the show, which went really well, man. A fantastic piece of television. And now you've got Addictions. Can we get a wee shout out for the new TV show as well before I go into the next question?
Basically, that starts on the 10th of May, and it's 3 1-hour long episodes that's looking at Scotland's relationship with alcohol, drugs, gambling, sex, and food. And I've seen a rough cut of a couple of them, and I'm pretty happy with it in terms of how we're framing the issues. It'll be the usual thing people can expect from me, which is, bringing a bit of my lived experience into the mix, while mapping individual stories of people that we talk to sort of expert analysis, history, other forms of data and evidence, and basically just trying to put forward this argument, whatever you think of the behaviour of people who have become addicted in some form or another to a behaviour or a drug, it helps to think of addiction more like a mental problem than a hobby that somebody's actively choosing to do. And it's really just kind of, for want of a better phrase, in the context of a drug crisis, is to move the needle a wee bit away from this idea that the drug addicts that we see out in our streets are choosing to live like that. Because if you knew how they were really living, you would know they never had much of a choice. So that's the 10th of May. That starts and it'll run for 3 weeks, mate.
10th of May, iPlayer.
It'll be on iPlayer. I'm sure it'll be up there for a few weeks, and no doubt it'll be repeated a lot on BBC Scotland as well. And I'll be doing. There's a lot of press dropping for it over the next few days as well. So just try to hit all those different demographics. Do you know what I mean? I did a few interviews today. I'm doing some stuff on Sunday and then on Monday morning. Before I go in to record my serialisation of my book for Radio 4.
So it's not just so this is different from it. All right, so that's for the Addictions, and of course you're doing the audiobook for the book as well. And I think that's one of the questions that's going to come up later on.
Cool.
And I think it was about does that come into your now obviously because you did Poverty Safari, won the Orwell Prize with that. So then you had to record an audio book where you probably hadn't even thought about it. This time you're writing a book aware of in the background at some point that you are going to have to do an audio book. Did that change your process and how you're writing at all?
No, but it is a good question. But no, man, I mean, when you're immersed in the book, you're really just thinking about trying to get it finished. And this really takes up your whole headspace. I could tell I hadn't thought about recording the audiobook when I was recording the audiobook because... I was quite emotional at certain points. There's a lot of got dead scabby lips. I got sunburnt on Friday and my lips are all blistering. Just noticed that there. I was, there's a couple of chapters in particular in the book that were difficult at the time when I was in the areas examining this stuff or thinking about the stuff, and then reading them in the context of the book, I could feel the anger or the emotion or the sadness or whatever. And then also there's all the pronunciations of all the academics' names and all that you're quoting and researching. Mad Welsh names that have actually only got 2 syllables but about 30 letters, you know what I mean? And it's all vowels for some reason. And you don't, you're sitting in the studio and not even the director of the audiobook knows how to pronounce some things. You're having to go on Google, and so hopefully we got a lot of that right. If we didn't, I can only apologise. But it was not in my mind one iota. Should I consider the audiobook when I'm writing this? The book is first and foremost, and that's the way it should be, I think.
You'd probably just start rhyming it all if you started thinking about that. A novel of rap lyrics.
Yeah.
So that Jim Watson wants to know, when writing the book, what fact or issue did you research that surprised or shocked you the most?
Interesting. What shocked me the most, and I noticed that I think readers will probably get a sense of I hope they would get a sense of my surprise. If they don't, then that whatever. Something that surprised me was when I was digging into a lot of the attitudes data around immigration and finding that there isn't that much of a difference between views on immigration between the kind of white ethnic population and black, Asian, and minority ethnic groups. Now, what is different is the reasons why people come to the conclusions that they come to about their ideas about immigration to some extent being controlled, and a concept of the kind of the ideal migrant. You know what I mean? Somebody who's coming to the country to contribute and this, that, and the next thing. You know, there are differences between white ethnic and black, Asian, minority ethnic because their experiences in a country like Britain, which is, you know, founded on concepts of white superiority. But ultimately, I think a lot of the debate about immigration prior to Brexit didn't really reflect that. You know, it ended up being a bit of a sort of, it was a dichotomy, wasn't it? Well, it was just Brexit was just fueled by this kind of angry white working class that were just xenophobic to the core. And while that does explain a certain section of that demographic, xenophobia and racism doesn't explain why a black person or an Asian person would have conservative views about immigration, and it doesn't explain why the Conservative Party, when it was getting tougher and tougher with the rhetoric on immigration, actually attracted more votes from the non-white people in Britain. So that was quite surprising. Although my intuitions had always been it was more complicated, but I didn't realise actually how complicated it was. Not a great deal else surprised me because I mean I was pretty across a lot of these issues. You know, in particular anything relating to social inequality and class. I kind of understand that with a certain level of confidence now. But that particular fact did surprise me.
We'll just check out who's tuned in. We've got Katie De Shizzle saying, "My rap career lasted as long as you were going to vote no for." was that did you have a period of thinking about voting no?
No, I don't think so.
And I hope you know that you're inspiration to me, says Katie as well.
Oh, thank you, Katie. No, I don't think I ever considered voting no. But I mean that's another discussion for another day. But I mean I think we've all sort of learned a lot over the last few years and maybe come to a certain more nuanced perspective about certain things. But maybe that's a chat for another time.
Alex Doherty has already pre-ordered the book. Poverty Safari was great and audible. Hello, Soapy is in the house. John Suter says legends.
All right, Soapy, how's it going? Thanks also, Alex. All right, Alan.
Alan's looking forward to the addiction series. Lou Rogerson saying I quit drinking over a year ago next month. Best decision I ever made.
Well done, mate.
Becky Wallace is in the house with a haw.
Oh, I'll tell you something. She's a tidy wee bit of gear, that Becky Wallace, by the way. I mean, you see how nice looking she is and how smart she is with the social media activity. Do you know what I mean? But actually, she's underplaying it. A lot of people overplay it, but she's really underselling herself. Really, I mean, like honestly, it's just a real treat to wake up to her most days.
We've got Epi in the house. We've got Jay Lee. How's it going? Troops, it's Jay Lee as well. Hello, everyone. And if you want to leave a question in the comments, if you're watching on Facebook or Twitch, go to youtube.com/YouCallThatRadio. It's a better quality. And also, if you're watching YouTube, remember to hit that red subscribe button. We're going back to Twitter for another question. What is the most important policy change you would like government to adopt after they all read it? And that comes from John Joe Jones.
Interesting question, because there's different ways of looking at this. You know, you could adopt a policy which was to deal with a very specific and serious urgent problem like the cost of living crisis, right? So you could increase benefits, you could give people a couple of one-off grants like the self-employment scheme or the furlough scheme. You could have a windfall tax of some sort. or you could do something more radical and adopt a kind of universal basic services approach. So instead of universal basic income, which gives everybody a certain amount of money every week, instead of that, give them free transport, free childcare, alleviate some of the costs associated with work and employment. But then if you've done that, then you would still fundamentally have to deal with the fact that the country and the institutions at the heart of it, the House of Lords, Westminster, are so out of reality, and that they are so democratically deficient. And so you're not really going to get the chance to do two really radical things. So you would have to decide, should you do something to alleviate short-term suffering now, or should you do something to address the fundamental problems in the country? And I would probably go for that option in the long run, because people have already experienced austerity, recession, a lot of hardship. So almost in a sense, people are conditioned for that difficulty now. And so what I would probably do would be to abolish the House of Lords, turn it into a second chamber of parliament, advisory parliament, which basically would still have the same role it has now, which is consulting on legislation, sending it back to the House with amendments and all of these things in it. But instead of unelected, hereditary privileged peers or anointed peers who are put there for their political use rather than their abilities, I would have it filled with people with lived experience, experts, doctors, community leaders, civic society, that's more representative of ordinary society. And so have them consult on welfare reform. Do you know what I mean? Have a single mother who's fleeing an abusive relationship go in there and talk about how getting pulled in for a random compliance meeting by the DWP and being confronted with the same coercion and aggression and threatening behaviour that she was confronted with from her abusive ex, but in a public institution. Have her explain that and how that feels, and then send that back to the House of Commons. Because I think that would really it would be symbolic of trying to draw a line under Britain's 19th century approach to the 21st century. Do you know what I mean? And as much as a lot of people might not be on board with that because it might seem quite abstract, actually, it also tackles a fundamental problem in Britain, which is this hereditary privilege thing, which is just run all through our society from hundreds of years. You know what I mean? You've got the same small number of families that have owned most of this country for more than 1,000 years. But it's that's one of my recommendations in the book. But that's what I would go for, something fundamental that really changed the democratic topography of the country. Sorry for the wanky language. But I would go for something like that. And also, just while I see there's a bunch of people here, I would say I hope that you're all going to come out to the Oranmore. I know some of you might not venture any further west than fucking Govan. Do you know what I mean? So a lot of folk will be like, oh no, it's in the West End, the same as when the Fringe, they say, I can't go there, I don't go there. And it's like, aye, you can, do you know what I mean? And I hope to see you there. And I don't think the tickets are too expensive, and there's a subway stop right there if you're from Glasgow, so there's really no excuse, do you know what I mean? Come there with your fucking baseball cap on and your half bottle of bucky and whatever. But definitely come out, do you know what I mean?
Got another one from Lynn. Do you think we can actually change the world? Are we capable of change? And what news source do you most respect?
Good questions.
That was hold on, sorry, that was from Lynn McAdam.
Thanks for the question, Lynn. Questions. Can we change the world? I mean, history shows that we can. But it happens kind of incrementally. I mean, I think one of the things about history is it shows a certain sort of narrative where it looks like the arc of change is kind of a straight line from that's towards progress. And I think humans as a species, we like to tell ourselves that story because that's something that we can live with. Do you know what I mean? It gives us a kind of sense of meaning and hope. But in truth, if we want to see change, we have to get as organised as the people that are running the society, because they're highly organised, highly networked, and highly resilient in the face of any challenge to their power and authority. So change, we can change the world, but I think you've got to focus on your bit of the world that you're in, your community. So sometimes tackling a big issue is about doing something in your corner of the world. The next part of that question, what was the next part of it, Mark?
What was the news source? Is there any, what's your
the most trusted news source, or the one that I respect the most? I'm at a point where I've got a sense of intuition with news now, because I can see it from both sides. So I understand when I'm watching something, and I understand where its biases lie or how it's restricted in terms of certain types of coverage. So I'm not necessarily looking to the BBC or Sky News for the absolute brass tacks facts on corruption scandals and things like that, and banking or the financial sector. They're not necessarily breaking those stories. They might cover them if they become mainstream, but I would say platforms like Open Democracy are pretty good. They obviously come at it from a bit of a left-wing perspective, but it's not infected with the left-wing ideology in the same way that maybe something like the Morning Star is, or something like that. I don't mean infected, you know what I mean? Like, Open Democracy is pretty high-quality, world-class, diligent, investigative journalism, which really gets to the core of a lot of things, to the extent that a lot of the more mainstream news apparatus will steal stories from it or cover stories and credit them for breaking them. In Scotland, I would say the Ferret is probably one that you can rely on for bias, obviously, but bias in favour of challenge and power. You know, so they go hard on the government, they go hard on all the political parties. They come at it from the point of view of the common man and woman or vulnerable people. You'll find a lot of good coverage on the drug crisis there, a lot of good coverage on lesser known political stories that do speak to some of the problems in this country that are under discussed. So Open Democracy for kind of UK and international stuff, the Ferret for UK and particularly Scottish stuff.
Amazing. And I've got, I suppose it's about getting a bit of everything. I remember when I go through little phases of when I'm writing involved in the news, when I'll watch a whole bunch of different news channels and try and find, who's bounce Russian propaganda off of British propaganda, and Fox News, you've got your CNN and your Democrats there and your Republicans of Fox News. But it's a bit depressing taking in all of that news though as well. I would say. But it does kind of gives you a bit more of a balanced view if you listen to all the lies that they're telling.
But I think it's important to, once you develop a certain level of news literacy, to then say, right, well, I'm watching Sky News, so here are the things that Sky News does quite well, and here are the things that I'm not really interested in the Sky News position on or the Sky News coverage on. And then you apply that to really all of the different issues, and then eventually you start to understand that, if you want coverage on a certain thing, you could go to that news source. And if you want it on another thing, you could go to that source. But I think it's dangerous when you get to a place of pathological skepticism of all information, because the information ecosystem is much more complicated. And so you actually are more, I think, thinking more critically and are working those critical thinking muscles by exposing yourself to different forms of media, even the ones that you think are a load of shite. Because if the only thing you're learning from watching a certain news channel is you're learning what other people think, that's a really important thing to know to navigate this current environment. Particularly if somebody like me who's out there trying to make arguments or trying to persuade people of certain things, you really need to know in what kind of environment are they forming their opinions and conclusions, and what sources are they exposed to. So, it's a healthy level of skepticism is important, but I think a lot of people they can fall out of news altogether, and what they're really reading are news aggregate sites that are still relying on mainstream media, but then somebody's putting their opinionated spin on it, and that's not the same as journalism. I'm sorry.
What just to add on to that point, with because obviously, as both of us have been very healthily sceptical of mainstream media for a long time now. And I noticed that quite a lot of people maybe that weren't so interested in news, but because of lockdown or whatever, they were kind of forced to sort of get some kind of news. And why is it that so many people are sceptical of mainstream, quite rightly, but they don't apply that skepticism to somebody just doing a YouTube channel or making well, I don't want to use the word fake news, but just sort of like, yeah, fake news, or somebody just having an opinion and kind of dressing up as something factual. Why do you think it is that some people they hate the mainstream so much that they're willing to believe just any random person as long as it's not got a logo next to it that they recognise?
Yeah. I mean, it's a really kind of, well, I was going to say interesting. It's quite dangerous as well. Sometimes in this environment where you have to think back to a time where 40 million people would tune into a broadcast. You know what I mean, or 20 million people. An episode of EastEnders or some other kind of comedy special at New Year and 10 o'clock news. And so, in a sense, society was a bit more cohesive then, because obviously, even though we're still being exposed to a certain level of propaganda, particularly in relation to foreign affairs and stuff like that, our opinions are diverging from an agreed reality that's all being beamed into our living rooms from a couple of news channels, whereas you don't have that now. So it's democratized to the point where we all have a media channel and we can all be broadcasting whatever we want to broadcast, and I think that is cool. But I do worry sometimes that what happens is you get people who are very slick operators in that environment, and they will, in one sense, kind of portray themselves as I'm fighting for you, the common man and woman. But actually, they're quite sophisticated in how they exploit people's skepticism or people's sense of disillusionment or alienation from mainstream culture, and they actually offer very little solutions as well. So really it becomes just another form of distraction and entertainment, because what you often find is a lot of people who are kind of zoning out to this alternative. I'm not saying every alternative opinion channel's the same, by the way. There's a lot of great ones, around COVID and lockdown discussions and all of that. I'm not saying every single person that diverges from mainstream is a bad actor and with nefarious intentions, but I do think that if the person that you're tuning into and absorbing all the time it is really just become a kind of mental masturbation exercise where you watch something and you're not acting any kind of, there's nothing actionable about it, there's no call to arms, it's just, here is what I think about what's happening, then what's the point in getting angry in the first place, because you're not fucking going to do anything about it. Do you know what I mean? Like, the amount of people that are all constantly talking about, and there's fucking pedophiles up here and this, that, and the next thing, and da 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 da, and it's just like, right, okay, well, I mean, you fought that for what, 20, 30 years now. What action have you taken? You know what I mean? What action have you taken? But then these are the people that will criticize somebody like me for going on the telly and try to do something, try to contribute something, try to get some sort of information out there about certain sort of issues. So sometimes I think people have got it backwards. Do you know what I mean? The information is supposed to give you information so that you can actually act. Do you know what I mean? With purpose. It's not just something to absorb like a fucking product. And I think sometimes that's what it becomes for some people, and that just makes other folk a lot of money.
Gary McQuaid says, how's it going, champs? How do you feel about the ongoing lunacy only getting worse from the government and the energy lecky prices to name two? Is there any help for folk on the dole that are vulnerable?
I mean, big questions. There is help out there. I mean, it's very hard to get, so it's a kind of two-pronged answer, because technically there is help, but it's hard to access the help. And then I think if you're dealing with disability or a chronic health problem, or you have communication issues, all of these things complicate the matter. In terms of the cost of living crisis, I mean, it's not really a cost of living crisis, is it? It's the cost that people have to pay to protect obscene profit. You know what I mean? Like,
It's a
and
crisis
that's
of
it.
greed.
I'm not even coming at it from like a pure communist perspective here. I mean, you have to really be kind of drinking a certain flavour of Kool-Aid to deny the evidence your eyes and ears in terms of the record profits posted by so many countries every quarter. And then the rise in food bank statistics, the rise in suicides, the rise in deaths of despair, the axe constantly being swung at services that are there and not just to protect vulnerable people, that was underpin the whole idea of social mobility, that you could rise out of your class and make something of yourself. These are the first things that seem to get cast aside as if there's some kind of luxuries, but all the privileges that the top 20% are accustomed to, these are all protected no matter whether you vote Tory or Labour or SNP. These are protected automatically. You don't get elected without protecting them. And if you try to cut them the way that they cut benefits or the way they cut legal aid, all these middle class people would just feel so attacked that they would just go and vote for the next party. So no politician can confront inequality because the whole political system now is really based on that poison chalice of you have to take care of the rich to even get into power, to even help a wee bit of the poor. And that, in my view, is deeply unbalanced. You know what I mean?
And what about the council elections tomorrow? Quickly, just while we're talking about on the politics side of things, have you got who you voting for, or are you voting?
I'll be voting, and I like my local Green candidate actually, Kirsten Robb, who's the only one who's came round to my door. And I was talking to her about some of the issues that we have locally here in terms of drivers cutting through to avoid traffic junctions and very tight roads and not knowing the corner. And there's lots of kids about here, and local elections are about local issues.
It's all
I
about
know
it's all about wheelie bins, basically, isn't it? It's all
aye,
bins,
wheelie bins and parks and
parking as
refuse
well.
collection and all these things. So I don't get too ideological when it comes to local stuff. A lot of people about there say, "Oh, you both votes SNP and all this, carry on and need the indie vote and all this," and I'm just like, "Oh, come on, get a rest." But either way, I decided to vote Green because I just like the level of engagement that I got from them, and I can see that they're making an effort to emphasise certain issues in a community where those issues matter to the people around here, because there's a lot of stuff obviously the Greens are about that maybe don't feel as relevant to people here, and I think it's right that they don't overpower people with the Green Party factor that can be so overpowering sometimes.
Go back to Twitter. Difficult on this, but this is from Lynn A. Have you taken the time to actually reflect on the achievement of getting this book finished through all the struggles of lockdown and parenting, battles with health? I'm absolutely in awe that you did it. Have you had a moment to just feel proud of yourself that the book's finished, or is it just too busy with the rollout of the book now?
I think the moment I'm looking forward to, I've decided to take Becky with me this time on the roller coaster when we go to London. Because I did all that myself the last time and I didn't know what was going to happen. I had no expectations, and then things just went so intense, and I was by myself so much of the time. I was by myself in the hotel after the Orwell Prize. I was by myself after the book went to #1. And it's weird because you kind of can savour and enjoy it, but there's nobody to share it with. Do you know what I mean? Like and there's something kind of weirdly lonely about it. It's almost like it's not real. And then I'm interested to know, if it's even half as intense as it was the first time. It would be nice to have someone there to kind of validate my intuition that it is a bit mad, what you go through when you're, when things are happening that fast. I'm not expecting it to be anywhere near as intense as last time, just just because I've become accustomed to living life at a certain ridiculous speed now. So if anything, my expectations might be too high, or I might feel like it's not done as well when actually it has. You know, who knows what the next fucking dilemma is going to be? But I mean, the most important thing for me is just I'll be able to savor the moment when the book is out. Do you know what I mean? Like up until the point it's out and people have got it in their hand and they're reading it, my job's no done, because it's once it's been delivered to the public, then I can go okay and take a few weeks out, and me and the family are going on holiday, and then Becky and me are going to Mallorca for our friend Marek's wedding, and all of these things hopefully will be savoured more, knowing that some big pieces of work are behind us, you know.
And what's we haven't actually shouted at the London thing. When is that, and what's going to happen in London for the international audience of You Call That Radio in London?
It's basically just the London launch of the book, which obviously we didn't have a London launch the last time, but it's Penguin Random House that's publishing it, and I think that they just want to have a London event. I guess they must think that people down south will come to it. I mean, I can't see another reason why they would have it. But then I think it's also to have something at the centre of launch day. You know what I mean? So the book's got as much a chance as any book to do well, just from the fact it's got Book of the Week on Radio 4, which means it'll be serialised throughout the course of the week, before it's actually out on the last day of the week, on the Friday. And then it's also I'm on Start the Week on Radio 4 on the Monday, which is the thing that catapulted the last book to the success that it had, even pre-Orwell Prize. So basically, it's all kind of teed up for things to go okay in terms of the level of exposure that it gets, and me being able to get a chance to kind of get out there and push it.
Are you looking forward to getting back out of there as well, just after being sort of stuck in lockdown for so long?
I am looking forward to it, and I'm a bit less like a rabbit in the headlights now. Like, I think for a while I was a bit kind of, what's this? I don't know if I can do all this. Do you know what I mean? And I realise actually, you know, that's a luxury, being able to sit and kind of ponder that stuff. At the end of the day, I'm in a position where I can get out there and actually like push the arguments. Do you know what I mean? And arm people with the thoughts and rhetoric and language that they might need to articulate their own frustrations with the system, and make a contribution to hopefully trying to create pressure on some of the people that need to be pressured to get this fucking shit show sorted out. So it's a tremendous privilege at the end of the day, as much as sometimes it can be a bit nerve-wracking and tiring. It's if you'd asked me 10 years ago, would I want to be doing this, I'd be like, fucking aye, and I'd also start laughing at the thought of it. Do you know what I mean? I'd be like, what are you talking about? Do you know what I mean?
We got what part of the book made you most raging? Says Kieran Bruce. Or what raging, despairing, writing it?
Yeah, it's a close tie between the chapter on property and the chapter on media. So the chapter on property begins with my experience of going grouse hunting with a landowner, which is documented in one of the films that I made for the BBC, but it's expanded on a wee bit in terms of my interaction with this guy. And me being like a fish out of water, do you know what I mean? Holding a firearm and just all that madness, being very remote, you know what I mean, from reality. But then it transitions to me being in Lancaster West Estate, which is where the remains of Grenfell Tower are. And I went down there. And met with Loki, actually, who invited me to his community after interviewing me the day before for a pilot thing he was filming. And I think the interview kind of sussed me out a wee bit, and then maybe came to the conclusion that I was all right. And then, so he invited me to his community. He wanted to take me a tour of the community and talk me through a lot of what they experienced that night and that morning of the fire. And I went on a walk of remembrance around the community. And so, this was a silent walk, about an hour or so, around that very divided area where, house prices rise and fall by hundreds of thousands of pounds depending on what side of a traffic junction you're on. And you transition from the kind of London of only fools and horses and EastEnders to the London of Paddington and Absolutely Fabulous. And suddenly you realise the people who own the property, they don't even need to be politically active for their housing concerns to be taken care of, because that's all baked into democracy. You own property, we look after you. But people in that community in Grenfell and that tower, they were literally screaming, this building's not safe, people are going to die in a fire. And nobody did anything about it, and when you're there and you're walking around and like a bit of a disaster tourist almost, it's infuriating, it's infuriating. And it has a chapter that was really written 2019, and then obviously a lot of work has been done on it, and I've agonised over it, because you've got to get the balance right between making sure the reader really understands what went down there, and not veering too far on the side of sensationalism. But I mean, it's just such a tragic thing. It's hard to even, for it not to be sensational talking about it. So that, or else the media chapter, which, has a kind of lengthy essay polemic just about media ownership, you know what I mean? And basically the media is, as much as there's a lot of choice out there, there's a lot of choice of fizzy drinks, but they all contain the same basic ingredients and are all squirted into your cinema cup for the same bogging tap, do you know what I mean? And the information ecosystem is just not diverse enough in terms of class representation. So that's why we don't have a discussion in Britain about class inequality, really, because no one's really qualified in media to talk about it, because most people at the top of media are privately educated. But then it sort of evolves into a particular analysis of the Jeremy Kyle show and the economics of the Jeremy Kyle show and a lot of his behaviour on the show, and it all centres around the death of Stephen Diamond, who Jeremy Kyle hounded to suicide, basically. And every time I read that chapter, I just get angrier and angrier, and it's weird because, when you write something or you make a song or something, maybe the first couple of times you play it, if it's good, you'll get a wee feeling of, oh, fuck, this is good, I'm onto something. But then that feeling dies down, you know what I mean? And you start to be more objective about it. But these are two chapters in the book that every time I read them, I'm just so angry and I get into a bit of a state. Do you know what I mean? And there was certain editorial notes and stuff on some of the stuff, not necessarily asking me to tone it down, but saying, is this thing that you've pointed out here, is that relevant, or is this thing here relevant? And I was like, look, I've took 90% of the notes and suggestions on, like, these are my guitar solos, you know what I mean? Like, just let me go, do you know what I mean? And let me do it, and I just have to trust that it will land. Because I was so angry, and I just decided I was going to honour the anger, and I wasn't going to try and calm it down, you know what I mean?
I got a message on Twitter from Bella Caledonia there, saying, "Hi Darren, looking forward to reading the book. Looking at the state of the social crisis, fuel poverty, etc., and the contempt people are treated, why do you think there's not more revolt? Are folk beaten down? What's the explanation for our quietism?"
I don't know if it's quietism. I think that the anger that traditionally might be channeled towards some sort of revolt, as Mike is putting it there, has been skillfully appropriated by culture war issues, and so we can very quickly go from a discussion about social inequality or corruption at the top of government, the revolving door between business and politics, to talking about if male crime is rising because Doctor Who is female, and that's a difficult media environment to get a message through, and a media environment, unfortunately, is how you reach the masses now, because the thing that one of the chapters in the book, the second part of the book that looks at political ideologies or political movements, my big analysis on the radical left, socialism really is that it's really good locally, but it's rudderless at scale. And I go into all the different reasons culturally, the subcultures involved, and but really at the end of it, I say, look, if media is a dirty word on the radical left, there's no chance. Because actually what the radical left has to do is apply the same mentality as the Blairists in terms of the ruthlessness and the discipline and the level of focus and the level of strategic planning, but to bring through a socialist programme into the mainstream. And the reason it never happened with Corbyn is because he didn't think he was going to win, so there was no strategy. So Corbyn often just looked like a guy who was the leader of the Labour Party because he lost a bet. And I know that seems cruel to say, and a lot of Corbyn fans, and I count myself as somebody who was really excited about the prospect of Corbyn in the beginning. But you could see from that first appearance in Prime Minister's Questions, there were just certain compromises, even just presentationally, that he wasn't even considering, never mind being prepared to make. And so really you just you set yourself up for failure. I think you get a lot of people on the left now who are getting a bit more streetwise about how they operate on social media and stuff like that. But for a lot of high-profile lefties, I mean, Twitter just remains a sneer dispensary or a place to kind of exhibit, in-depth knowledge of historical marginalia, or how obscurely can you construe a current event, and at the end of the day, that comes from very low levels of contact with what you would call ordinary people. Do you know what I mean? And so, there is a lot of anger out there. There is a lot of rage out there. But at the end of the day, when Piers Morgan can put on the act that he understands you better than Grace Bleakley, you know what I mean? Then that's a hard fight. That's a hard argument. I can see why a lot of people on the left retreat into the world of theory and the world of role playing as philosophers. Because who wants to get out there and actually try and be a prominent, proper socialist on the public stage, and think about it in a long-term way, and have answers for the questions that you're going to get, and be prepared to have a close skin shave and wear a fetching fitted suit. Do you know what I mean? I'm sorry, but these are the things that people will have to consider. Do you know what I mean? And I don't mean that superficially. I mean, what it says is that presentation and first impressions matter in this world where 90% of everything people are consuming is video content. And for years, a certain image of what a proper leader and politician looks like has been beamed into people's heads. And so if you're trying to change that system or change that environment, you've got to think a wee bit smarter about how you operate in it. And that's what I would say.
But it's also mad, though, the way Boris presents himself from time to time compared to Corbyn. Corbyn got absolutely destroyed for, I don't know, not having his top button buttoned up. And then you've got Boris just sort of running around brushing his hair with a balloon.
No, I know, and there is obviously there are many.
But it's because he's posh. It's because he's just really, really posh. He's just allowed to be eccentric.
It's because Boris has all the social connections that come from an elite education and being in bed with different sections of the British establishment, and so he's a lot more resilient in the face of. I mean, Boris has been under sustained media scrutiny for his whole career. I mean, the idea that he just somehow ascended to where he ascended as if he was just given a free pass is ludicrous. It's just that he has some powerful friends that help him become more resilient in that environment, to the point where you'd struggle to name a media outlet that hasn't at some point called for him fucking get out of office, and he's still there. Do you know what I mean?
Nidri Meditation Centre says, you don't seem to have said much about the council elections tomorrow. Why is that? We actually did do that. We've done that. If you go back a bit, you'll hear us talking about that. AP says, I'm a cyclist and I've exercised my whole adult life. Or they're having a conversation about it's about depression and mental health. We'll get back to all of that.
Cool.
But they're having a wee conversation between themselves. Going back to Twitter, we have who would you like to read your book? Says Claire Malcolm.
Everyone. Obviously.
Everyone.
It's written with everyone in mind.
Well, okay, who was, okay, maybe we reword that question to, who were you glad read your book last time, whether that's just maybe people that you were fans of their writing, but also I thought, I did see that you seemed to be genuinely overjoyed the amount of teachers or lecturers. It was getting used in schools and colleges a lot more, and there was a lot of sort of middle class people from middle class backgrounds or even above that who were saying that it was good for them to finally understand something.
Aye, I think they got kind of. It was written in such a way. I think it was written in such a way that it was welcoming people into the conversation. Do you know what I mean? I think try to get the balance right between the kind of righteous anger and the attributing blame, but also recognizing some people just don't know what they don't know. And that's okay, because there's lots of things I don't know, and I would need somebody to explain to me. Do you know? With this book, I think I probably I've went a bit harder on the anger, because I feel it's justified. But I also always try to be fair. And I, I've rewritten every chapter in that book about 10 times. And so any vitriol or hyperbole that's still in there, I've left it there because I have some sort of, it performs some sort of function, either for the journey the reader is going on and where I need certain readers to be at certain points in the book in preparation for what I'm going to hit them with later on in the book, or because I'm deciding that whatever uncomfortable truth is being expressed is irrefutable and absolutely just needs to be said. The thing about this book is really it's more conventional in its structure, so it won't be as immediately accessible as Poverty Safari, because you can't really pick this up and just open it at any page and just read. You need to take in the argument as it's laid out. And there's an emotional journey in the book, which is all dependent on the reader going through it chronologically. And I know it seems a mad thing to say, why would you not go through a book chronologically? But I know from my own reading styles in the past that I haven't always been able to stay with a book from beginning to end, and have been defeated by a book because of an inability to concentrate. But there's a bigger function behind this book. There's a bigger objective behind this book, which is probably for the first time in my life is an attempt to present a thesis of what's wrong that's a bit less obvious at first, but this theme of proximity. We have all sorts of systems in place to protect against certain pitfalls of our democratic system, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. We have a rule of law, for example. We have two chambers where you've got one chamber that's making the legislation, they send it to another chamber and it is reviewed and sent back, and all of these things are tried and tested over time because they have some sort of utility in the functioning of a country, arguably. But we don't have anything to protect a democracy when the governing elites and the political class become so socially, culturally, and economically removed from other sections of the population. We have nothing to protect against that. We have no, even just raising that as an issue is weird for some people because they just can't perceive it. So really, I'm hoping that I'm putting forward something semi-original to the discussion, at least about Britain as it stands now. But I guess we'll see. I just hope that a lot of the people who enjoyed the first book will bear with it at points where it might seem like it's dragging, or it might not seem like it's got enough of my personal experience or my personal life in it, because it's not that kind of book. Do you know what I mean?
Because obviously
So
Baltic Safari was deeply about your own experiences. So are you taking yourself out with that a wee bit?
I did. I decided to quite late in the process when I had some choices to make about editing it down. So it was a case of, do I keep all this memoir about me and relapsing and being in rehab and more vivid descriptions of my experiences on benefits and all of that? Or do I kind of shorten that stuff or just allude to it in a couple of paragraphs and keep on all this stuff about the people that I've encountered over the years during my work, you know, whether it was on TV or whether it was me going out on my own to visit certain areas like Margate or, as I say, Lancaster West Estate. And actually, I realise also, if I was to do another book that was just primarily kind of memoir driven, that means I'm telling the audience this is what I do. Do you know what I mean? When actually that's not what I do. Do you know what I mean? I've got more to say than just what my own experiences. And I think by focusing just solely on me as much as it's kind of like crack cocaine to the reader or some journalists, it takes the scrutiny away from the system. It takes the scrutiny away from the people in power who are accountable to us. And so I'm hoping that change of gear will be interesting to the reader, because I'm sure their expectations of what this book is about are already set if they've been following me. So I'm hoping they pick it up and they're surprised, you know what I mean, that it's not quite what they thought it might be, but who knows, man.
Speaking of change of gear, I'm just going to play a little bit from your Secret Animal set and top up my tea. And this is from the last part of your, it was a brilliant set from the Secret Animal Garden Party. And yeah, let's take it away.
Me and my old man didn't always get along at home, so often I'd go and just kick a ball off a wall on my own. It was Pollux, so the threat of violence was constant for your morning stroll after school when you'd be walking home. It was comedy gold, but it took an awful toll. Hyper-vigilant, dropping at every knock at the door. Grew up running for dealers and ducking provolone. That's why I always feel like something wrong's when it's no. That's why I'm nervous, with a nervous disposition. That's why I find it hard to read and I struggle to listen. Try to manage society's expectations with an epigenetic imposition stressing my limbic system. Then you emerge in a world of middle class values with nothing but a bus pass and a little stash of Valiums. It's when you learn of a prevailing sensibility that's subtly condemning and judging everything that you say. And it isn't much better in your own scheme. I used to tune out in my class in a daydream, knowing I would have to fight when the bell went. I would try and plan ahead, thinking where and when. Every day was a school day. I quickly learned not to get the better of somebody that thinks they have less to lose than you do. I learned to play the odds, I learned to navigate, and when you strike, do it in full view of the gallery. Used to be into instruments and act, but the scheme put an end to that. In my scheme, there was no such thing as a family, man. You learned about love through the back of your father's hand and carried tools as a policy of endowment, and thought Scarface was a tale of male empowerment. Where you were taught that you're worthless in a lawless circus and don't grasp is what constitutes a moral compass. The old days aren't as good as you remember them. Try to recapture your youth staring at the pendulum. Doctor hands me the quetiapine and says you're mental, son, and pulls my cerebellum out my rectum with a speculum. He'd banging like a kettle drum. Rock the same clothes again even though I slept in them, feeling nostalgic about the life I led when I was young, blowing benefits from drugs, slagging cunts that went to work. Here they're building a tower, but no in Glasgow will come down as fast as it went up. Here's where you heard it first. Heads burst, MCs in my crosshairs. I watch them like computer software at a human jobs fair. Poets think they're dropping philosophy, looking smugger than a vegan busker covering a Morrissey song about people smuggling, snorting single origin coffee off a hipster menu and a women's refuge getting converted to a fringe venue. I don't know how I lasted this long. Feel like a book would feel if it was trapped in a song. Laptop with 40 tabs on, half of them I'm preaching to the bam pots, the other half is just eating violent porn. The righteousness exhausting me. I can only see other people's hypocrisy. There's no virtue in critiquing others constantly when privately I'm acting so dishonestly, consciously. What every saintly gesture hides a vain intention. Every layer of pretension, masking hate or resentment, try to reassemble myself in the dark when the instructions and understudy wanders the wings of his own production. Dramatic irony. Directing a cast of aspersons, treading the creaky boards of his narrow assertions with the absolute cheek to wonder why he isn't a happier person. That's a script with a character reference. Rest in peace, wee man. Cheers.
Darren, live from the Secret Animal Garden Party. We'll be back in a little second with more for Darren. This is your last chance. Last orders at the bar. A question.
Brothers and sisters, may the peace that can only come from the one God be upon you. We are here to tell the people that we hear you. One God will not allow us as people of conscience to lose our morale.
Powered by our patrons. As you call that radio TV, we are live with Darren McGarvey promoting this, the social distance between us, how remote politics wrecked Britain. If you're watching this for the first time and you're watching us on Facebook, go to youtube.com/you call that radio. It looks and sounds better over there. If you're watching on YouTube, remember to hit the subscribe and the notification button. And you can also support the show at Patreon or coffee.com or hitting the join button on YouTube. There's also super chat options all around there somewhere. Darren, that was The Secret Animal. It was just a little bit. I thought it would get us a wee break.
Yeah.
Every line was fire, says Jay Lee. Words have the power. Words shares the power of knowledge. We are words in our realities, says Epi. Brilliant, says Alan. Very best wishes with the book, says Mary. Great
Thank
set,
you.
says Jigsaw Tiger. Never fails to impress me, Dan. Thank goodness he's about, says Saturn Returns. It's class here in the writing process. This has been a fantastic hour, Mark and Darren, says Stacey. Thank you, Stacey. And Nidri has said, oh yeah, so Nidri Meditation Centre was, what she was saying, or he was saying, is it's not about, it's about, you've not been talking about local.
I've not been talking about it on Twitter.
Twitter.
I've not been talking about much on Twitter, to be honest. I've been very busy finishing up these TV shows, trying to get these launch events organised. And I took a kind of step back from the current affairs commentary when I stopped my column with the Daily Record, precisely because I was finding I didn't have the time, just due to family responsibilities and other work-related stuff, to really be across the news in the way that you have to be able to produce proper analysis and opinion. I mean, it's easy to phone it in, but it just didn't sit right with me. So I've started to really come to the view that as tempting as it is to see myself as a commentator on all things from foreign affairs to identity issues and culture war and COVID, and my bread and butter is social inequality and class, and I can do a wee bit of other stuff now and again, a wee bit of political analysis if I'm in tune with what's going on, and I've always got a bit of rhetoric here and there, but at the end of the day, I'm not falling into that trap a lot of commentators have fallen into now, where they just think that they can turn their hands and minds to any issue that crops up, having read someone else's opinion about it that day, or because it's a trending topic. Because I think actually that reduces the quality of the discourse generally, where you've got a lot of commentators who got into commentary or got into journalism because they were good at one or two things, and then they start thinking, oh, that article I wrote about trans issues got 10 million fucking hits, do you know what I mean? Or maybe I should just do more of that, do you know what I mean? And it's like, cool, mate, no, what's your level of experience with that issue, or what's your level of proximity to that issue, do you know what I mean? Like, because as much as a lot of times people read your article just because it validates what they say, what they think, and it's got nothing to do with actually, the level of attention or thought or detail sometimes. And so I've not talked about the council election because I'm not obligated to talk about anything. Do you know what I mean? I'll decide what I talk about, and I make that decision based on a number of factors. And one is anything I say on Twitter politically can draw me into a public debate that lasts for days and days. So me deciding not to potentially get my concentration pulled over there when it needs to be in another area is a decision that I make for my mental health, a decision that I make out of a sense of responsibility, not to just, fire off my first brain fart into the public sphere. Do you know what I mean? When I haven't really considered anything. And then also, my thoughts sometimes maybe are just better being my private thoughts. That's a radical idea, isn't it? In the
No, it
age
is,
of
it is.
Facebook and
No,
social media.
I've been doing the same myself. Like over lockdown and stuff, I was like, I would just stop myself with posting thing. I would be like, why are you saying that? It's just going to cause a fight. And obviously, I've not got anywhere near the Twitter following or very social media following you've got, man. That sounds like a nightmare.
But it's all relative, though, isn't it? It's all relative. Like, everybody's got a threshold for like a level of fucking radioactive.
It ruins your day though, because you've got to check it once the arguments start. You're checking your notifications to see what the other person said back, and it feels like if you don't reply quickly with another response, you've lost some kind of imaginary battle. So I've just kind of sort of shut up. But you're quite right. I mean, it's just, I suppose it's the way that your Piers Morgan, he just gets right into anything that's going to get and just sort of kind of tries to guess what the public want to hear.
Aye.
So. And I think so. That, just before we go to the next question, just about the Daily Record, the column. You did a great column there for years, and is that taking a lot of pressure off you from, having to do that every single week?
Aye.
What was the process like with that? Did you have lots of ideas backup ideas, or were you just literally waiting to see what happened in the news and then just going with it?
You might have an idea, and then there's a big story breaks the night, the day of your column. You know what I mean? Or you might be really struggling for ideas and you're really you're really churning it out. Do you know what I mean? And because you develop a skill as a writer, you can always make it engaging. But I was finding that there were times, when I'm writing it in the back of a car, or I'm having to take a break from another job I'm doing to go into a cafe and finish it. And I was still always trying to file on time and make sure the copy was nice and clean as possible, and make sure that my stuff didn't have to be legaled and all that, because that adds more time to the process. So making sure that what I'm saying is factually accurate and within the bounds of acceptable commentary. But I was also finding that the 7 days between the column just seemed shorter and shorter every week. And sometimes I could see, a lot of the other commentators were focusing on a particular issue that was trending or a controversial thing, and I was kind of finding, from a distance, I could see how they had lost a bit of their patina of respectability, because a lot of people seen them as being kind of sucked into a rabbit hole a wee bit, be kind of what you would call audience capture, where they start getting a lot of interaction because they write about a certain thing, and that becomes something that they're prepared to write about more, even if it's something they clearly don't have any specialist knowledge in or experience in. And I think, you got a lot of real head cases out there, man, in the commentary sphere. I mean, who the fuck thought Kate Hopkins should have had an opinion column? Do you know what I mean? That's a real extreme example, but there's a lot of folk out there, man, that have got commentary gigs, man, like Darren Grimes and that Dan Wooten at the Sun, and just real roasters, I would say, that have mastered the art of saying very little in a tremendous amount of verbiage, and really it just inflames already tense situations. Whereas I think I'm more interested, even when I'm angry and even when I'm being provocative. It's in my nature to want to reconcile things. It's in my nature to try to frame things in a way that's about saying, how do we come to an understanding around this? That is part of my nature, and sometimes that's difficult tone to take in a tabloid, because tabloids they're papers that are really shouting at you from the shelf from the shelf. Do you know what I mean? So I've found actually that I don't miss it. I don't miss that gig at all. It was good. It was good to learn how to do it and get that insight. But the book is the medium that I want to communicate through now.
Jigsaw Tiger said that would ruin the whole model of Twitter if everyone just kept their thoughts to themselves.
Yeah.
Imagine that, just a Twitter where everybody just Shut up.
I know.
I seen a meme the other day of Elon Musk claiming that he knew you.
Aye, I know.
I know
You know,
Loki.
some people will do anything for a bit of attention. Do you know what I mean?
We'll go back. Speaking of Twitter, we'll go back to Twitter. We've got another few questions to.
I've only got another couple of minutes, if that's all right,
Sorry.
because I've got
all right.
I've got to jump to the shop. I've got to jump to the shop before 10.
Cool, that's cool. We've got who is it? Last questions. It is. Have bought my copy of The Social Distance Between Us, says Joanna Hughes. My question, does it revisit these words in Poverty Safari? I no longer believe poverty is an issue or politicians can solve because an honest conversation about what it will require is too politically difficult to have.
I would say it addresses it, but it actually it lays out what the difficult conversation is. If that really if the book is anything, it's that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I definitely come at it. I wear my political beliefs on my sleeve a lot more in this because it's less about my personal experience and more about how I explore different issues and from what perspectives and who I give a platform to in terms of who's given voice in the book. And I think that really demonstrates my political beliefs in a way that comes through much stronger than the last book. Because the last book was really a critique of the left. While this book does have a chapter that's devoted to critiquing the left, it's more of a kind of full frontal assault on the whole thing, and that's speaks to that particular sentence.
Shop better be next door, says Epi. Good point, because it is. I've lost track of time because normally we start at 7 o'clock, but we started at 8:30, so it's 10 to 10. The last question goes to Jay Lee, who's actually was going to ask what I was going to ask anyway. And it's when does Dan plan on dropping music? You're very busy with everything, but
I'm going to preview some music on Friday. I mean, they might have heard some of it already if they've been at gigs and stuff like that. But
that's right. This Friday at McCool's, Sonny Govern's
McCool's for the Sonny Govern 21st birthday. So I'll be doing 20 minutes there. And I think it'll be mostly kind of new-ish music. But I've been working on a project for a while now. It's just I just want to be able to devote my full headspace to it. So I'm trying to get it to a place there once all this work is done, I can just get in and finish it. Do you know what I mean?
Amazing, man. Well, I'm actually going to finish with one of your newest releases, which was we'll do the live Capture Works version from Scotland today. Thank you very much, Dan. You're welcome anytime, and we'll do some more questions another time. Good luck with the
Mark.
book. Good luck with Friday, McCool's. And I'll see you. I'm away on Friday, but I'll see you at Oran Moore on the 13th, mate. All the best.
Cool, mate. Enjoy your holiday, man.
Will do, mate. Catch you. Bye. I am on holiday next week, but tomorrow night we've got Dominic Diamond, the legendary Games Master presenter. Dominic Diamond will be on the show tomorrow talking about television, journalism, and of course the legendary Games Master gig as well. So that's tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. This You Call That Radio. We had Bonnie Prince Bob on last night, who's he's going for councillor in Edinburgh Central. So if you're in Edinburgh Central, you should maybe give that a wee watch. On the YouTube channel, that's where most of the stuff is. It's youtube.com/You Call That Radio. If you're on Facebook or Twitch, you should go over there and hit the subscribe button, tickle the notification bell as well. Any other comments going to read out quickly? Anyone else got anything to add before we go? Thanks, Dan. Looking forward to Friday. That's at McCool's if you missed that. Loki will be performing as part of the Sonny Govern's birthday party. Happy holiday, Mark. Good night, everyone. Well, I'm back tomorrow. For Dominic Diamond. And if you've enjoyed the show tonight, you can support the show at patreon.com/You Call That Radio or coffee.com/You Call That Radio if you've enjoyed the show and you want to help us build the thing and do more shows like this. The link to pre-order Darren's new book is I'll put in the link in the comments just now. If you want to pre-order the book, I've still not read it yet. I'm excited to read it. That's the link there to order the book. Thank you to Dan and everyone who's tuned in tonight. We're going to finish with another clip. The first clip we played earlier on was from the Secret Animal Garden Party, which you can get on You Call That Radio's YouTube channel. This is from Capture Works with a backing track, and it's a cracker. It's called Scotland Today. I hope you enjoy it, and we will see you tomorrow night, 7 o'clock.
Check. Might as well come in brash. Fuck the fash, just in case anybody's wondering where I fucking stand. Burn the flags, and fuck the facts. We are now for the looking glass. Welcome. I'm so woke, like. Last tune. Check. Might as well come in brash. Fuck the fash, just in case anybody's wondering where I fucking stand. Burn the flags, and fuck the facts. We are now for the looking glass. Welcome to Wonderland, where being right's more important than taking the time out to understand. Who needs political music? We've got Taylor Swift doing mumble rap. Who needs an artist with principles when there's a humble brag that you can double tap? Who cares if food bags are bigger than factories? New for our pensioners losing our hair thanks to governments cutting back. Journals saying nothing's no something I'll fucking hack. So who's up for a tongue lash? No cunt's gonna make no comebacks for a fucking grudge match with yours truly hang up with thumbtacks. Scotland the brave, turn on your telly, welcome to Terror Dome. Stripped in my track to the voice and no beat. Every beep of the metronome represents an under 20 or 30 more persons on methadone, so fuck a pleasant ode. I'll piss in your poetry slam to the champion, hands me a megaphone so I can set the tone. Tom Leonard's no dead, he's away to get peace for a culture and mourned his demise, but when Tom was alive it detested him. Banned up to being taught in schools cause the low status language offended them. No wonder so many kids tired of poetry, no representing them. They diss me for taking donations for Rowling, but that is so stupid. Some people are salty that Harry Potter got more kids into reading than going to school did. Welcome to Britain, pleb. When you can't be poor if you own a phone, when you can't have it without the internet, and you can get to Paris on a train quicker than you can to Inverness. Kids can't play hopscotch on thin cement without getting hit for rent by a landlord's infrared. We're saying to the stads are okay when the preemptive strikes are against the Afghans and Iraqis, but claim that the lefties are fighting the skinheads or fascists for putting their hands on the Nazis. I'm a student who grew up in affluence. Please keep his campuses safe for a step at the Unigate, down the estate for a taste of a life that is actually dangerous. Unless your notion of social justice and identity align identically with those who understand perfectly, you'll get aggressive lectures on identity. But play parks and libraries up there, we're told just the practical luxuries, while royal weddings for Z-listed blue bloods receive generous and non-taxable subsidies. Political leaders are frightened to buy multinational companies. All they can do is keep tipping our hats to the middle classes in these flag-waving dunderheads. The Tories that grew up in boarding school sell off the country and drive us delirious, telling communities that they just need to get overhangs they never had to experience. Thanks very much, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. Peace out.
Yeah, enough respect in the way I respect to the man like Mark. They love what the man I talk on the radio. In case you never know. You call that radio, call that the radio. You call that radio, call that the radio. Come and say, in my name, I'll just go with the flow. In my name, I'll just go with the flow. Till you miss a mark, now go bend down low. Till you miss a mark, now go bend down low. Boom. Lot of mercy. Yo. You call that radio. You call that radio. Come and say don't you be another man, I'll go lose your head. Say don't you be another me say and lose the head. Me say radio, call that a radio, straight from outer Glasgow, straight from outer Glasgow, nice enough on the studio. Come and say in my name, I'll just go with the flow. In my name, I'll just go with the flow. Till you miss a mark, now go bend down low. Till you miss a mark, now go bend down low. No radio, you call that the radio. Them and I give you miss a lot of subject. And them
Capture Works, you can watch the full set in the comments there. That's Loki live from Capture Works, and the one we played before that with the a cappella set was Loki live at the Secret Animal Garden. Great show, Mark, says Jay Lee. Thank you. Great show tonight, says Lou. Bro, guys, thank you, Dan, says Mike. And thanks, Mark, says Alan. Thank you. Brilliant. Seeing Dan so focused. Great show, mate, says Mark McVicker. Happy holiday, says Jigsaw Tiger. Thank you. Thank you. Kirstine, thank you. Thank you. Louise Ed says smashing. Thank you to everybody tuned in. Thank you to everyone who's a patron at patreon.com/you call that radio. If you want to support the show, you can go that, or you can make a one-off donation at coffee.com/you call that radio. And also, if you use YouTube a lot, there is a join button and there's a super chat button. You can also use that if you want to support it. It's the only reason that we can do this. So thank you to everyone who does support. And next up, Dominic Diamond, the legendary Dominic Diamond, tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. I hope you can all make it for that one. Healthy show. Thank you, Jim Son. Thank you, Epi. And we'll see you tomorrow for Dominic Diamond. And go and order that book, The Social Distance Between Us, from Darren McGarvey, out in May. And one more shout out to the launch night with Frankie Boyle on Monday the 13th of June. Or more, get involved. And we'll see you guys soon. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye!
Do you want weirdo or do you want it?
What?